Hi everyone, welcome back to JLMI's Summer of Sugoi. My name is Bill Riley and I am here today with Mr. Christian Storms. Christian, how are you?
Great, man. That's Summer of Sugoi. That is pretty wow to me.
Absolutely. I mean, every summer can't be Sugoi, but this summer is very Sugoi.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
You can just trust me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It is.
It sounds like you don't believe me.
No, I believe you. I believe you. I was thinking about the wow mark when somebody like heard the sound of like outer space and the researcher wrote wow, and so I was thinking, because Sugoi meaning wow. Hopefully the people listening understand what Sugoi means. Maybe
I have my fingers crossed.
Yeah, please.
So, Christian, I brought you in today because you are not only a producer, an actor, a dialogue coach, a sound recordist, but you also do mountain climbing. You also do podcasting, painting. Like you're very much a Renaissance man in that sense. But I wanted to ask you, first of all, like which one pays the rent and which one kind of like satisfies your soul?
Well, I guess one thing I say, I do a lot of things because I'm easily bored. And the other thing is it's kind of like hard to have a full-time living, working as a dialogue coach because there aren't so many, Japanese movies with Japanese people speaking English, So I guess, they're all satisfying to me and, I would be doing them otherwise. I like, obviously painting, offers the most sort of freedom because it's just me. And when you're a producer, you're kind of like, you can't really do what you want. It's a kind of a committee, everybody's deciding, and even if you want to do something and the director wants to do something, that the client may say, no, we can't do that, and, so like with the Sapporo Beer commercials, I don't know why we don't smash the cans. It would be so cool. But of course, that's not what we're going to do.
Yeah, so, your hands are kind of tied creatively in a certain situations, right?
So you've got restrictions in that. And, but I mean, producing has the most sort of challenges, limited time, limited money, what can you get done? Working as a sound recordist is actually pays better. It's a better day rate and you get overtime, which you never get as producer.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah, it's good. My radio show that I do is like a monthly show. I do it as a volunteer and ski. I also, work as a rock climbing guide and a ski guide. And I only do that about maybe 6 times out of the year, but I just enjoy sort of exposing beginners, especially kids to skiing and climbing. You get like a kid that comes from Hong Kong and he's never even seen snow before, and so we're going to go ski together for the day. And that's
Are you
fun.
Doing that kind of private service in mostly English or are you doing it in Japanese as well?
I do it. I mean, I do it. Pretty much in English, so it's like the Karuizawa English speaking guides. And so we get, just because a lot of the ski resorts don't have people that, speak English. And so, that's how I get, find people. So,
that's fantastic. It's nice to have a niche.
Yeah. Well, plus there are a lot of people come to ski from overseas, and because Japan's a great place to ski. But anyway, that's my answer to question number 1.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I love how you summarized it up at the end. That is my answer for question number 1. Moving on.
You'll know how to edit. You can cut, Yeah. I'll clap.
If
you want, we can clap. We can clap between. I'll get out my tail slate or get out my slate.
That's right. You actually do. I saw a picture of that online. You have this gorgeous digital slate that you said you picked up for a project because the post-production was going to be happening in the States where they normally use digital slates.
Right.
But they don't use digital slates here in Japan.
No.
Why is that?
It's a weird thing. And I don't know how much you know about the slate, but like it's changed. Usually the camera department runs the slate in America or anywhere else in the world, but in like Poland, for example, the scripter runs the slate, and but in Japan the ADs always run the slate. And they use what they call a kachinko, which is like is an old slate, which is a real slate, made out of slate. And the old days in film, you wanted to like, you should be on the slate within 1 frame because you don't want to waste any film, and that's how they do it. But now, it's very casual. Everybody holds up the digital slate and whatever. But I don't know. It just hasn't really caught on here because of the fact that the ADs use the kachinko and stuff here.
Now, because you do so many different things, it's hard to choose one thing that I wanted to talk to you about today. But I was kind of noticing that kind of like the common point or the kyotsuten that kind of links all these things together is the fact that you do come at things from a bilingual perspective. You approach everything with the like kind of like the armor and the ability, the skill set of having both languages and both cultures, well, multiple cultures under your belt. So like I wanted to know how you started out with your linguistic journey when it comes to, learning Japanese, and if you had any specific hurdles or obstacles that you had to overcome.
When it started, I didn't think this is what it would be. I studied German in 7th grade. I took French all through like 8th grade to high school. But, I was never like, hey, I'm going to go live in France or anything. It's just because you have to take the language. And, but, when I started studying Japanese, I started in college, and it was one of my majors is Japanese language and culture along with economics. And I started late, actually. I started into my sophomore year. I did a summer intensive program, which is 1 year. And I was pretty average, despite having studied French and German, and my pronunciation was really poor.
Well, it's a completely different, grammatical pattern, and the pronunciation is far from French and German.
And at the time, I didn't really understand how much language was like math, but then, we're doing these repetition drills of, like, where is the post office? And, nai nani wa doku desu ka? And you're just substituting words in there. Yubin kyoku ginko doku desu ka? And you're like, oh, that's what language is, it's a repetitive pattern, and that's how you learn it, and so that was, big, I don't know. I was like, oh, I got it, but that
realization that formulas play such a big part.
Exactly. And then I was pretty decent at math, so maybe this would help. But, but then also realize, I think everyone realizes when they study language that you realize how little you know about your own native language. Like, oh, you tell someone to diagram a sentence in English, they're like, what's the, okay, I know what the verb is, I know what the subject is, but anything beyond that, people are like, lost. And I still get lost when it comes to like, transitive, intransitive verbs, the whole shimeru, shimaru, hajimeru, hajimaru. It's like, and sometimes like, okay, I just have to go back to an example, and then I'm okay now, so
those are very confusing to me in particular. I totally understand the transitive and intransitives.
Yeah, it's really hard. And the other thing, I guess, at first, because you don't have much of a vocabulary, you start trying to formulate thoughts in English, and you try to translate them in your brain, and that doesn't work. And I remember like one of our teachers in like 3rd year, we were doing all these idiomatic expressions, and he's like, okay, so in Japanese, how would you say what's up? And we're like, okay, wei ni wa nani ga arimasu ka? We're like, okay, that does mean what is above, but it doesn't mean what's up. Yeah, but I mean, what you realize that, and so you realize that you can't, especially if you're a talkative person, it's harder, I think, to learn a language because you want to say something, but you really need to be like, it's more like a boxer. You're like, okay, I know the jab, I know the cross, I know the hook, and that's all I can do. I can't do anything else, and you just have to pick your little, your stuff. So you need to take your 200 words that or whatever, and you really need to put them to use and get confident at them, and then you start building your repertoire. You can't expect to like suddenly be as funny as and fluent or whatever as you are in your native language, because it's and so that's I think that's sort of challenging for sort of everybody,
like kind of setting your limits and kind of coming to a personal realization that maybe I can't be my 100 right away. I have to be 50 of myself until I get better and I can reach that 100 to really express my personality. Yeah.
I remember the first year I lived here, and like the first year I taught English at Eon, and we had some friends that we did the week training session together and got together with them like, maybe 6 months after the thing. And one of the guys, Mark, was, he had never studied Japanese, but he was talking about how he's living in like Matsumoto, and he was saying how like kind of lonely it was, and because he's a really funny guy, and he's like, you know what, I only told one joke this entire year, and like I only made people laugh once. And he's like, I was at a bar and I was having some, like a chestnut, and it like exploded in my face, and he's like, and I was able to say oishikatta, and everybody laughed, but he's like, but that was it, the whole year I didn't, and so that thing, and so that's a hurdle, I guess. But I mean, the other thing is that I used to just buy little notebooks, and I would just go to bars or whatever, and just start writing down funny things people say, or like, and then it's like you get your own little book of jokes, and you try them out on people, and you realize like, oh, this is a great joke for talking to a bunch of guys, but it's not really that funny in mixed company.
Interesting.
Okay.
So you would just have like a little notebook of things that you heard in conversation. Would you be asking people to stop, rewind, say that again for me?
Yeah, or people would, people try to teach you stuff too, like I remember, just like play on words, like da you, show you, I love you, hayami you, and you're like, hey, that's kind of funny, and so you just write that kind of stuff down.
That brings me back to Osaka, where one of the first ones I heard and I actually understood was something like ramen, tsukeme, ore ikeme, mitaina kanji.
Yeah.
Something like that, and I was like, oh, I got it. Okay, I can laugh now. Like, that was really nice.
Yeah, so that, I think that's sort of part of the, the whole journey. And then, if you're, I don't know what it's like now, but I mean, but every time you get in a cab, and it's still the same, actually, whenever I get in a cab, cabbies ask you the same questions every time. Where you're from, how long you lived here. And so like, it becomes like a little script, and eventually you get better and better at it,
That's very true.
To the point that when if it's a dark night and you get out of the cab, the guy's like, oh my God, it's a gaijin, like I thought, so.
You also mentioned that one way to like improve your language is that you also did a lot of reading and actually listening to how people speak. That helps you become a little bit more fluent, right? So I was wondering, like, what kinds of literature would you recommend for maybe people who are starting out on their language journey and just getting into things?
Well, my fourth year Japanese teacher, Watanabe Sensei, before I moved to Japan, he knew I was moving, and he knew I never listened to anyone anyway. And he was kind of like, his advice was like, when you get there, just listen to people, and take it in. I think you need to read something that people identify with. I mean, a popular thing. I think the newspaper is the easiest way to start. And you can start off with just headlines, like today, Okinawa de tsuyuake sengen, and you can check that same headline, on the regular English news, so you can kind of switch back and forth. And then you can move to things like I think the best thing is the Tensei Jingo, which is like, in the Asahi newspaper. And it's like, I think it's 670 characters, and it's always some kind of populist, what means populist, sort of what the mass public is thinking, kind of a thing, and that's fun because you can identify people. Animation, obviously, especially Sazai-san, just because it's easy to understand, and and every episode is pretty much about some Japanese culture thing. It's like, now it's Setsubun, now it's Oshogatsu, now it's Sotsugyo, or it's Nyugakushiki, and so that's really, that's a great thing to watch.
I was actually surprised when I was taking formal like sit down classes a few years ago. Sazai-san was being used so often in the class. And then when I looked at all the different things, like as you just said, it was always focused on something involving Japanese culture, right?
Yeah.
So it got me thinking, like, is this made for educating foreigners? Because it does fit in quite well.
I don't think it is, but it's perfect. I think it's made for general brainwashing.
General brainwashing.
Well, I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like growing up with Captain Kangaroo or growing up with Sesame Street or something, but it's a great way to, you know, it's a very wholesome, you know, show and whatnot. But I think that's a great thing. And then, you know, you can Japanese films, obviously, especially now because so many are subtitled. And then, and then when you get really going, you know, try reading some Japanese authors, and you can, of course, read the book in English first, and then be adventuresome and try to read the Japanese version. And you know, guys like Murakami Haruki, of course, you know, and Yamada Emi and stuff. But I think that's a good way to do. I used to read, you know, like Rolling Stone or magazines and stuff too. But you know, of course, print media these days is sort of, you know, not what it used to be. But you know, but back then, you know, you know, in the 90s, it's kind of all you had to. So,
see, you kind of came at it at a very like a high level way of thinking. I think, like you said, like start off with a headline, and I'm thinking headlines for me even now sometimes, because there's like either tangen dome or there's like a lack of clearly visible grammar. Even now, like they're quite confusing for me sometimes. I think so. Like when I was like first starting out, like super low level, I would read like children's storybooks.
Those are
like,
good. Yeah.
Like The Little Mermaid, written like only in hiragana, kind of.
That's hard to do too, man. Once you learn kanji, like reading all hiragana drives me insane, you know?
Yeah. Where does the word end? Where does the word begin? I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I mean, I did like it in the sense that it teaches you the importance of kanji that you haven't learned yet. Like, because, this will be easier once you know a little bit more, kind of a thing.
Yeah. You also, I mean, reading in general is an interesting thing. I mean, and we didn't recognize it when we were, you know, learning English. But then when you learn Japanese, it's the same thing. You realize that you're really not sounding the words out. You're looking at them as little patterns. You know, you see under the bus or over the bridge. You know, you see it as one bit. You know, as opposed to under the bridge, you know what I mean? And so, and in the same way with Japanese, and that's what's hard about the hiragana when it's all together, because like you like you said, you don't know what it stops and begins, and so you're like watashi no otou-san wa, and like, and eventually, you know, you can look at it, but it's weird, you know. It's but
hearing you read that out just reminded me of how much I used to use karaoke to practice as well.
Yeah. I mean,
like following the syllables and everything.
Yeah, and repetition, obviously. So I mean, you know, everybody needs a good karaoke song that they're going to sing in Japanese, even if you can't sing. But you know, you need to be able to do that, and you know, and yeah. But yeah, I think there are many ways to do it. I think whatever floats your boat, whatever gets you interested. You know, like if you don't, you know, want to read the Tensei Jingo, find, you know, if I don't know, find a magazine about guitars or whatever you like to talk about, and read that, you know, and get interested in that, and find people that you can talk to about that.
Exactly.
Because you need to be able to, you know, then use it, you know. So, but the good thing about a headline is you can like say to someone, "Hey, did you see today that, you know, that the rainy season's over in Okinawa?" You know, and
that's true. Yeah, it puts you in like the same starting point with other people on the street. So if God forbid you have to come up with conversation real quick, you're able to connect with someone a little bit more easily on a universal level.
Yeah. It's, of course, you know, the beginning too. I remember, you know, you're talking about, you know, Kyung Kyung or Nakayama Miho or the latest, you know, TV dramas and stuff. But I remember like finally watching like, what is it, Tokyo Love Story or some of those early ones. I'm like, wow, I pretty much understand everything being said, but oh wow, this is just like 90210. I mean, it's like, it's not, it's what it is, you know.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not dissing 90210. I even watched the reboot, but the point is, you know, it's you're kind of like, wow, I've studied for the 4 years to understand this. Okay, well.
So but like the moment when you actually realize, I didn't really have to work that hard to understand what just happened in that scene. You feel great about it, and hey, maybe it wasn't, you know, the deepest conversation, but your ears are doing that like automatic unconscious training, and you're just absorbing the language instead of focusing.
And even now, I mean, this is kind of what it's like to be a high schooler, I guess, back home. But, people say things you don't know what they're talking about. I mean, and you're hearing words that you've never heard before, and you just still have to roll with it, and make sure that you're that you understand the other person, and so maybe you ask someone to explain the word, or you restate it in a word that you can understand, and so, instead of like, if you don't know the word for scissors, you're like, where's the thing that cuts, and you're like, oh, that makes sense. You should learn the word for scissors at some time, but when you forget, but I mean, that's how it starts, I think, in the beginning.
Christian, welcome to my everyday.
Yeah, exactly. Well, especially, I mean, if you move here and you have no training and you suddenly go out, it's really rough, So.
That always happens because I can never remember the correct names of household appliances. So I'm always asking for the thing that cleans the floors, the thing that makes the air less wet.
Yes,
like describing things like that.
And then you can, of course, confuse honesty with the vacuum cleaner, whether it's shojiki or sojiki. So, I mean, seriously, it's a vacuum cleaner. The voice.
Please cover the floor with honesty today.
Yes. It's my Dyson honesty doesn't work. Yeah.
So I want to actually talk about one of your other side jobs, your position as a English dialogue coach for Japanese actors. Now, I have a history in education as well. I've taught English here in Japan, and I noticed that through teaching my own language, you learn a lot about the other person's native tongue, like how they are approaching your language through the grammar that is automatically coming out of their own mouths, because they have their own mother tongue forming that grammar for them. So I was wondering if you had experienced the same thing as acting as a dialogue coach. Were you able to kind of gain any insight into Japanese pronunciation or Japanese fluency that you might not have if not having done that job?
I mean, I guess I more so picked up the subtleties of, the English language, especially like vowels and long vowels, diphthongs, and as a kid, you think in English we only have 5 vowels, but no, we don't. We have like 24 vowels and stuff, and we have pure vowels and diphthongs and triphthongs and all these things. And also, which I didn't know before studying sort of linguistics or being a dialogue coach, is where vowels are formed in the mouth. Like if you talk about the back vowels, like obey all honest fathers, those are all in the back or in the front. Or stir the surprise singer's cup, those are all in here. Or Lee will let fair pat pass, they're all here. But in Japanese, they're all in the front. And that's what makes it hard for Japanese people, because they're trying to say all of the sounds in the front when they, it's like they've got a piano with one note, and they should have 3 notes, and they can make a chord. So I guess I learned that quite a bit. And then what often happens to Japanese actors is like they have the line, and then they're learning the line. Let's say it's simple, like maybe, and I say to them, so what's that mean in Japanese? Of course, they have the script in Japanese as well, and they're like, I don't know what it means in Japanese. I'm like, well, you better find out, because because the word maybe can mean many things depending on what happened before. And so you get them to go back to the original text, and then they discover like, oh, in this case it's osoraku, it's not tabun, or it's tabun, and then they can really approach, then they can say the language. I mean, then they can say it in English, and because it really is a feeling too. So I just, you have people say it, act it, as you would act it in Japanese, and now do the same thing in English, and then it actually works,
Now, in a past interview, you also said that when you were working as a dialogue coach, you answered that, fluency is not as much of an obstacle for the actors, but the acting ability is more of the obstacle. I would love to hear a little bit more about this.
Well, it's the real problem, especially, is a lot of Japanese actors are untrained actors. They're
So
good. They're good looking boys who were models, and suddenly they're actors, and they've never done any kind of formal training, whether not even like improv, and that's why a lot of comedians become actors, because by doing comedy and improv, you at least have that ability to listen and be in the moment and whatnot. But
so most of the people that we might see on TV and in movies, they're only there solely because of their looks.
well, I mean, they may have some ability and they may act well, but they have never formally studied acting. So, and they're just sort of going by, they don't know, they're trying to do the best they can, but they're not really sure what they're doing, and that makes it harder to get to performance and things, but there are plenty of people who've, studied the method, or Stanislavski, or, Meisner, and repetition exercises. And, there are Japanese acting schools and things, but there are plenty of people who, haven't had that much training, So you look at when you take an actor that is a good looking guy, and a lot of times people, the way they act is the way they talk. They believe that the way they can talk is and in television in general, which is very audio driven. When you watch television, it's all, when someone speaks, the camera's almost always on them, right? And it cuts back from he says this, she says that, and the camera goes back and forth, right? And then you can play around and you can be funny because you're in your own language. But when you have to then say it in another language, it's a lot harder. And then you can't just fake it with your voice. You need to actually, feel it. And so, you look at especially a lot of Japanese, I'll tell you what, if you want to know someone's a good actor, next time you're watching something, hit pause, especially if it's a scene with multiple people. And when you freeze frame it, you can actually look at the person's face and you can tell if they're actually engaged, like they're listening, but a lot of people, when you do that, they're just like a blank look. And, and especially,
is it really that common?
Yeah. I mean, and it's, especially, and it's because they're not engaged. They're not acting. Of course, there are great Japanese actors. I'm not saying that there aren't, but there are plenty of people who haven't had a lot of training, and that makes it harder. So,
I guess they're just playing the game of memorization and waiting to speak.
Yeah. And when the TV goes back and forth, then if you're just showing me, I don't need to be listening, because I'm not going to be on camera when I'm listening. And so,
But I mean, if you think about it, like, you want the overall scene to be good, you would want to be there in character, supporting your partner to make sure they have a better performance.
Well, that's if you're a trained actor, because that's what you learn when you study acting, is how to. But
that's not what you learn in good looking school.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Exactly. I mean, and so, but a lot of the guys that come up that way, that they struggle, and eventually, they realize that they do need to study acting more. And then you hear people like, oh, actually, so-and-so famous actor, he's been in LA for the last 6 months, or, or like Sanada Hiroyuki, who was he was in the Jacks Club. He was an action star. And then he went to London, joined the Royal Shakespeare Company. And then he came, then he moved to LA, and then he was on Lost, and he's been studying, he's been living overseas and working as an actor ever since, because he got serious about acting,
Well, surely he not only got serious, but I think he also made himself a bit more marketable.
Yeah.
So he's not just limited to his own language films.
Yeah. I was a dialogue coach for Tokyo Vice, which is a new series that's coming out on HBO. And one of the actors I had is a first time, never spoken English at all. But was very helpful, because he actually had been in a movie where he had to speak some Korean, but he was fabulous. I mean, this guy, Kasamatsu Show, I think he's like one of the hottest, most talented young actors out there. But he was saying, like, they had the first table read, where everybody goes through the script before filming. And I was like, how was it? And he goes, well, I'll tell you what, Watanabe Ken was the best. And he was like, his English was the best. And I was
Mhm.
like, do you know why? And he's like, because he's the best actor. And I'm like, yes, that's absolutely true. Because, he just has that ability he could say anything and it's convincing. And, he's, as Meisner would say, he's living truthfully under imaginary circumstances, that's kind of what acting is. And, he's just got that ability. And
sure.
And Watanabe McKenna, obviously he is a good looking guy, but he's not like that good looking, I mean,
you're not going to be mesmerized.
You're not going to be mesmerized by him, so anyway.
Yes, I mean, but I think that's very true. Like for everyday life though, like even if you're having the conversation, your pronunciation does not need to be perfect. You can sound like yourself, right? But as long as you believe in what you're saying and like you say it with passion, then people are going to take it and like, yeah, I totally trust you and I want to work with you. I want to be friends with you, kind of a thing. So
well, that's the hard thing about, I mean, you can do it when it's your own native language. Like you can have a script and we can come up with a scene right now and we're, first time we meet and I'm, convincing you to buy, Girl Scout cookies or something. And we can flow with that and we can make stuff up. But if we had to do it in Polish, I know 5 words. And so and so you're back to the beat, like we talked about earlier about learning a language. Okay. I can only use the words that I know. So for the actor, a lot of times they don't speak English at all, the only, words they know in English are that now they're dialogue lines. So they're like, okay, it becomes a lot harder, and you have to wait for that moment, but you're like, do I say it now? Or, what I'm saying? And what they're forgetting is that what gets your mouth moving is something in here.
Yeah.
You feel something. And once the emotion comes out, you put the words on top of that. And they haven't learned that as an actor. Therefore, they're like, okay, now I should talk.
Yeah, if you're not driven to participate in the conversation, you're just reciting lines.
Exactly. So yeah, you need to get either, you need to have a reason to answer someone, and that's but they haven't learned that, maybe silence is good, or maybe, you need to find that and Japanese acting always talks about the importance of ma, and how, how the beat is so important in this and that, but it's like, it is, but if
sometimes there's too much ma.
Yeah, there's way too much ma.
There's too much ma.
Yeah. I think it's ma. There's too much ma because the actor can't remember his lines. He's like, oh yes, I love you.
So it's like, then it comes down to the editor. It's like, you could have cut that out.
Yeah.
You could have made them look a little bit better. And my favorite is when you see someone giving a monologue in a Japanese TV drama, and everyone else is just like serving ma the entire time. Like,
oh yes,
like, oh god, like this is so unrealistic. Anyway, I'm sorry.
But you know what? I mean, watch CSI or watch Blue Bloods with Tom. Tom Selleck, and there's a lot of cheesy acting and Maz in there as well, so, but,
well, you definitely didn't name like top of the crop examples right there.
Yeah,
so
but
nothing we can do.
Yes.
So you mentioned earlier that you were working on the commercial, the Sapporo Beer commercial. I think the name of the campaign was Where East Meets West, correct?
Yes.
And so you were working on this commercial through your kind of like this powerhouse production company that you run called Local 81 here in Tokyo. And so can you tell us a little bit about Local 81 and what you do with them?
Yeah. So I'm I'm kind of owner, operator, producer of the company. And it's a production company. We mainly do kind of like overseas productions and people coming here to film, whether it's documentaries, commercials, television, so I've done, we did Nike commercial in the past, done The Amazing Race like 3-4 times, Top Gear, whatever. But the Sapporo Beer, this one actually 3 years ago, we did a similar job, and was asked by Canadian. Well, Sapporo is actually, there's Sapporo North America, which is basically Canada and US, and so they have like any other commercial, they have a creative agency that comes up with a commercial, and then they have to make the commercial, so they have to find some local based producer to pair up with to get that. So I got a call from a company called the And Company in Toronto, and we started talking about at that stage. They had the old campaign was called what was it? Well, basically the concept is like ongaishi, and it was called, it was called Return the Favor. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. That's in Japanese, that's kind of like ongaishi. And they're like, what do you mean? We're like, well, okay. So explaining that whole concept to them, and that helped sort of, change the commercial around. But, and so that began, I did research. So the research, what involves, first of all, we have to do casting. So we're looking for a rockabilly, real rockabilly, real baseball fans, a real guy who makes hamburgers, real denim, craftsmen and whatnot. And so
people that have incorporated something from the West, but they've kind of changed it,
right?
With
that was the
Eastern
idea.
style.
Yeah, I mean, the old commercial was like Japan has absorbed many things from the West, and it's like baseball, rock and roll, jeans, and as our way of saying returning the favor here is Sapporo Beer, is what the old one was. Okay. So for that one, I came up with a lot of creative content and, did the casting, find these real people. And we actually even we made some little mini documentaries as well after we shoot, because we're using real people. If we're going to spend an entire day with them, an entire day of filming is not going to appear in the commercial. Therefore, we were able to make these nice little 4-minute many documentaries telling more about these people. So one of the guys,
excellent. Yeah, you got to spend a lot more time with these people than you would have if you were just doing a commercial itself,
exactly. Yeah, I came up with this idea of the surfboard shaper, and they're like, at first it was a hard sell, but actually it ended up being sort of like one of the documentaries that everyone liked the most. So that was kind of cool. So you asked, I think, what's involved in all this, and so yeah, I mean, basically, everything from start to finish. I mean, it's what producers do. We're the bosses, the planners. We control the budget. We pick the crew. We book the gear. We pay all the bills. We help every department, get things done. And, I drove the art van as well, and I did the sound for the interviews. I mean, and I cast all the talent, and I was second AD on the set, and whatever. So
for you, coming at a commercial from not only a business standpoint, also from an artistic standpoint, what do you think needs to happen in order for that to be successful and to make it feel like art and not like business?
Well, I mean, I'm glad you say that you don't think it's forced. It is a little forced, when it's
always forced. It's always that way. So.
And that's kind of what always happens when you do get some sort of Japan exposed to the outer, world kind of concept. But I mean, I guess what you need the most is a product that's actually worth a damn, it's very easy to make a commercial about Sapporo Beer because it's good beer. You mentioned Suntory earlier. Suntory beer is not that good, but did you? I can't remember if you did, but anyway, so it's hard to promote something that doesn't have a leg to stand on, kind of thing. But I mean, in general, commercial work it really is a necessary evil for people who want to do more creative things. So and it's actually how actors stay in business. They, especially in Japan, because you get paid way more money. You get maybe isenman at least to be, that's like $100,000 to be in a commercial. And a Japanese person could be in a movie and work for a month, and they would probably make $10,000. And so that it helps them stay afloat. And of course, that's why their agencies want them to do as many commercials as they can, because the agencies in Japan take half the money, which to me that's criminal.
That's insane. That is insane. Yeah, but you notice it so quickly when someone does a really, really quick ippatsu gag on TV, or suddenly kyūni ure hajimeru ne, and then suddenly they are in every single ad on every single train, every single billboard.
Well, it's just probably because they're cheap. Their rate hasn't
at that moment, right?
Yeah, and that's what international casting is about. That's why you look at movies like Mighty Thor or whatnot. So you get Chris Hemsworth, who now is the hugest star in the world, or Tom Hiddleston, but you get them in at non-SAG rates, and Asano Tadanobu or, Watanabe Ken, you're always, that's what's always happening. So, Watanabe Ken, now he's too expensive. We got Asano Tadanobu. So who's the next cheap guy that we can get? But I mean, that's why people do show up on so many commercials, and of course their rate does go up and whatnot. So, but I mean, personally, I don't own a television, so like I don't really know how much commercials actually change my perspective or influence sales to me. Although, sometimes I'm like, oh damn, those are nice golf clubs, or I believe me, I am, like I just bought a set of Mizuno irons, and I'm so excited about them because like Mizuno has this great, they really do feel different. I feel like, oh, this Japanese craftsman has built this thing.
I feel like you're creating a commercial for me now.
Yeah. But I mean, I totally do. I don't know. There are certain things, but I mean, in general, God, think how many ads we have, out there. And I really couldn't say to you, oh, yes. Oh, what commercials do I remember? Oh, like, where's the beef for Wendy's, or that they crying Native American for the sponsored thing of, putting trash everywhere, or Coke, enjoy Coke, Coke and a smile or whatnot. But
the 1984 Apple Olympics ad.
Don't know. I mean, can't, but I mean, so I guess for me, and I guess for a lot of people, we all do commercial work because it pays better than other work. And it allows you to say, okay, now I can work on that cheap little movie or that cheap something or other. And
it sets you up for you to be able to do your passion, right?
Yeah, exactly. For a passion project.
People normally think that in order to get into the industry, you have to start as a PA and work your way up and kind of have that first several years of kind of like a technological slave when it comes to that. But like, how would someone who's interested in getting into this, maybe in working in Tokyo, what do you suggest they do? Should they go to a technical abilities school? Should they just try to get on a set as a PA? Like, what do you suggest in Japan?
Japan doesn't really have PAs. I mean, because, there's production, but if you don't know anything, then, no one's going to really want to hire you, So, I mean, the first thing you're going to need is obviously language ability. If you can't, speak Japanese, then you're going to go nowhere. You could, a lot of people graduate from some kind of a film school or a visual arts school. And so, like, let's say you study camera, then you want to join the camera department, and you'll get the lowest job there is, which, in the old days used to be loading film. And now it's, carrying stuff around. It's usually DIT work. It's backing up data. It's, schlepping lenses around and whatnot. But I guess find someone that's working in the industry and figure out a way to get there, I mean, and so let's say you are a cameraman, you've studied photography, but just, go be a lighting assistant, or, go say, okay, I'll join the production company. Just try to get any job that you can get. And then, you got plenty of time to get around and talk to people and really be like, hey, I'm in the lighting department this time, but actually I'm a photographer, or I'm a whatever, and keep me in mind. And you start building your network of people, and, people are like, oh, I like that guy. He's helpful, try to be helpful and try to and then figure out what other people are doing and like ask them questions and learn, And it's funny. My daughter just got she's a freshman at Aoyama Gakuin, but she's like, I'm so happy that she got in there, but she's like, Dad, I think I want to be a hair and makeup artist. I'm like, oh my God, you should just quit college now.
Yeah. Why are you wasting my money now?
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's important to learn something. But I was saying to her, I was like, hey, I know if you want to go, volunteer, if you want to be somebody's assistant for, let me know. And I think that's the way to do it. Find somebody that you can shadow, and man, it can be, from a distance too, I mean, just figure out a way to get there,
Christian, thank you so much again today. Before we finish up, do you have any current projects that you want to plug? Anything that you want to let the people know about so that they can find you a little bit more easily?
Well, who knows? If you're near Ebisu, I sold a painting to a wine bar that's there, and go check it out. It's in the Ebisu Garden Palace. It's called 1DL. It's a wine bar, and funny, lately I've sold some paintings, and it's a good thing.
That's one of them being behind you right now, correct?
Yeah, that's I haven't sold that one yet, but I put that up actually for the interview. I was like, hey, I should make a nice background. But anyway, hey, so
just a little bit of self-promotion.
My wife's like, what are you doing with that thing? But
where can people find your podcast? Because you do a monthly podcast about like the soundtracks of famous movies. Right?
Yeah, that's on SoundCloud. If you can, I guess maybe in this you can put the link or something there. But I get probably maybe 30 shows or so that I've done so far. And so, yeah, if you want to hear about Japanese soundtracks in Japanese, and maybe that's something that would interest you. There's a lot of katakana words, that you're.
That's what I really liked about it, because you're speaking bilingually, like back and forth, and your pronunciation in Japanese is so easy to follow. It's so clear. So I think it would be great listening for anyone who's interested in music and maybe wanting to challenge themselves linguistically.
Yes. I believe the term is bonyomi when it comes to my script reading abilities, but it is very measured. And
I just thought like it when I'm listening to the news, it's like, whoa, this is too fast. But yours was so like just the clarity of it. I was like, he's hitting every syllable. I'm loving it.
I found that like if I speak at like a normal speed, the way I speak Japanese, it's really hard to catch for someone who doesn't really know a whole lot about movies or soundtracks,
or someone who's just not used to your particular accent.
Yeah. Right? And I think, for me, if I say, Francis Ford Coppola, like bang, but people are like, who? And they've never even seen The Godfather. And, and so, you kind of have to speak a little
slow
slower.
It down, enunciate. Yeah.
Plus that, you've got music in the background, which is kind of distracting. So I'm always trying to, but I don't want to lower it too much because I'm not trying to hear the music. Yeah. And good luck to everybody. I don't know how you got involved in this journey of learning Japanese or whatever, but my Japanese teacher said to me was it junior year, and he says, Japanese people, when first time you say anything in Japanese, they're like, jozu desu ne. And he said, let me tell you what that means. That means now that I've heard a non-Japanese speak our beautiful language, I realize the long journey that you've embarked on, and good luck to you. So
that's so much nuance in one phrase.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of what it is. And you the point is, it's like it's like when someone says, do you think I'm fat? You're like, you can't say you're fat. You just have. So you'll find that when you come here, and you'll the first year you're in Japan, you're like, I'm fluent and I know everything. And then after a while, you'll be like, wow, man, I don't know what I'm talking about. And it's a long thing. It's like being a marathon runner, or you'll get better. It's like your golf game. Hopefully your score will improve the longer you play. Or it's like anything you want to devote your life to, it's a good 30-year process. So
yeah, the more you learn about the language, the more you realize you know so little. Yeah.
And it's good that, in life, you should realize you know so little, and it's that we should all be learning. It's an important thing, don't stop.
Never stop learning. Exactly.
Yes. Or you die. Yes.
Yes. Well, so, mentally and socially, that is very true, though. Yes.
Yes. World's a big place. So, thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate it.
Hope to see you in town in one of those times down in the JVTA.
When you come away from your beautiful palace in the forest that is classy Karuizawa, I will see you in Tokyo. Thank you so much for today.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you, man.
Good luck. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.